a little bit of problems with trying to work with it.
What kind of problems, Ray?
Well, loading the setup, loading my setup on the analyzer to get it to work.
Hmm. Okay. Well, yeah, we'll go through certainly go through that as part of taking a look at the data sources tab, which is in fact where we're actually going to start um, from looking here. And so we'll jump over here. So this is version. I don't remember what version this is. We're going to take a look here. This is version 57, so it doesn't have the latest features. I guess it's the one I just had installed. Um, but yeah, just kind of taking a look. Now, I'm recognizing some of the names, and some of them are new. Guys, do you just want to have a quick idea? If you're new, could you type a little message in and just say you're a new racer if you're new to data acquisition, just so I have an idea how to focus the talk?
Yeah, yes, I'm new to this as well.
Okay. So, yep. Okay, that's at least 3 or 4, 5, 6. Okay, awesome. Yeah, it's really kind of going through. Oh yeah, awesome. All right, so we'll take things really slowly. And guys, if you have questions, interrupt me. I can talk for hours about this stuff. I don't know if I'm saying good stuff or bad stuff, but I could talk for hours about it. But so stop me, ask me questions. I will start off by saying that if you're really interested in the topic and you really want to learn, there is a book out there that I highly recommend. It's called A Practical Guide to Race Car Data Analysis. It's written by a gentleman called by the name of Bob Knox. And let me kind of type this into the window here. Should have had it ready to go. A Practical Guide to Race Car Data Analysis. Um, and it's written by Bob Knox. And it is a really, really great way to learn data acquisition because he talks in very simple terms, very straightforward stuff. And the book is intended, it actually references Pi, Motec, I can't remember some of the other names of the other systems. But it's a very general book but it'll walk you through, and you'll see many of the same concepts in that book that you see in iAnalyze, except you don't have the advantage that you don't have to figure out how to use the software to put a plot up of a particular trace, because we tend to do most of that for you. So I really would recommend getting that book. It's a little spendy. It's about 89 bucks, but it is well worth the time for you to if you really want to dig into data and try and figure things out. So anyway, without further ado, we'll get started with the data card or with iAnalyze Racing, and we'll start with the data sources tab. And this is kind of like the nerve center of everything that goes on within iAnalyze Racing. It's in here that you pick out your map, the lap that's going to represent your map, and what laps you're actually looking at as your data source and your reference lap, or in your reference source. And you'll hear me say data source and reference source, or data lap and reference lap. They mean the same thing. I flip between them based on what I'm talking about. So if you hear one, they both mean the same thing, and that probably can be a little confusing. So I'll try to stick to say data source and reference source, but that represents the individual laps that we're looking at. We'll start a little bit here with the map source, and you notice that both map source, data source, and reference source all have the same controls up top, where you can do different things. And we're just starting with the individual controls. We'll start with the online browser, because this is one of the big tools that people tend to like, is being able to see other folks' data. And when you open the online browser, it pops up. If you have any data open, it'll automatically open for the right track configuration, and it will list the cars that you have available, and it'll select the cars for the particular session or series that the data that you're looking at is in. And you can just click on these, turn them on and off, and when you want, you can click Find Laps, and it will find the laps that match what you've selected. Now, one thing about iAnalyze Racing is that we don't always upload your data laps. We only take the laps that fit in the top 10% based on what the fastest time we've seen so far is. The reason for that is that there's not necessarily a need. I mean, when everybody wants to see data laps shared from someone, they're always asking, well, I want to compare against the fast guy. And so we only upload the top 10% in case there are other conditions, for example, different air temperatures, surface temperatures, humidities, whatever, that may affect the top lap time, and you'll be able to pick out those times from there, and you can see that they're listed here in the individual laps themselves. Yeah, ever notice I'm always at the slowest of the scale? So this is the lap browser. So I just wanted to point out that really only the top 10% get saved up there. And I'd appreciate some feedback. You guys think that's a good idea or a bad idea? Because we could do all of them, but I'm not so sure that that's going to. As it happens, if you look at the download data, the only ones that are really getting downloaded are the fastest ones anyway. So, for what that's worth. And once you've decided, so now you can go through and you can pick all the different laps or the different devices, etc., or different configurations, etc. Once you have that, you can pick a particular lap that you'd like to use, and you can say okay, and it will automatically download it for you. And it will ask you where it'd like to save it, and so you can click save. And notice it all of your data for iAnalyze Racing always goes into the iAnalyze Racing folder, under then the car name, and then the track, and then if it has a configuration, under the configuration, and it automatically will get saved there. It usually just selects that for you, but you can move that wherever you want. If you have other places you want to save the data, or you want to put it on your desktop because you want to save that lap and then send it to another friend of yours that's using iAnalyze Racing, you can do that too. And I've already downloaded that lap, obviously, but and then it'll load it, and it will update the traces here based on the data. Now, folks ask, well, why do we need a map lap? Well, iRacing doesn't share the GPS data, and we could pull it out and drive each track and get every individual lap from driving around, but you get just as good a map, and in fact sometimes I think a better map, because you can get a better idea of the driver line if you do use some of a technique called dead reckoning. Dead reckoning uses your current speed and your heading to figure out how far where you go to draw the same map, and that's exactly what we use for the map. So if you go through and you pick and guys, was just picking up some feedback back there. I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody. If you have a question, please, on the right-hand side on the bottom, unmute your microphone and then ask your question. Otherwise, we're just going to pick up a lot of feedback, and I don't want everybody to be distracted by stuff going on in the background, unless it's my dogs barking, and I can't mute them, strangely enough. So anyway, getting back to the map. So we use this technique called dead reckoning, and it's a time-honored technique. I mean, it's an old sailing technique from, how many ever hundreds of years ago, and it gives with race car data analysis. I mean, this is typically what was used before GPS was available on race car data acquisition systems that are on real race cars. And in fact, I'd hazard that say 50% of the ones that are still sold today still do the same thing, because it gives you a fairly good representation. In fact, one of the things that I mean to do in the future here is to actually put together a driver path analysis tool, so you can use the GPS data to really check it, and then compare that to the dead reckoning map. And the comparisons I've done is that the dead reckoning map comes pretty darn close to what you'll get with the GPS data as well. So a new feature that actually started in 57 is the ability to edit the map. And in the track map editor, there's a couple of different things you can do. First one is you can go through and you can adjust the map angle. Okay, that's not terribly exciting, but you can do it. If you look at a track, some guys like to look at a track this way or whichever way you might have done. I grew up not too far away from Watkins Glen, and this is the way I always look at it. It just happens to coincide with what I do or what I remember. We have something called the segment calculator. You know, all of these colored segments are in here where you can map your straights and your turns. You can play with these parameters here to play with some numbers, and the numbers are relative in terms of, to try to figure out, to let the computer figure out what segments and to draw on the map. And you click the generate segments map and you can see it drew some that were slightly different. Let's make this a little bit more different so it shows a little bit more, and we'll do it again. Okay, and you can see, there you go, the number of segments are radically different than what we originally had. And sometimes it'll add segments in, it'll have too many, too few. For example, if we look here, this orange segment, that's not a turn, but the colored segments are all turned, straights are all black. But that orange segment, it's like for some reason it thought that was a turn based on the numbers that we had set there. Well, we know that's not right, so let's get rid of that turn. And so we'll go here and you can see it highlights it, and if you hit this X, it gets rid of it. And you can then, if you want to move the, if you don't like where these segment boundaries are, you can just grab them and move them, and it'll flash a little bit there to let you know what you're doing. And you can set these S curves out. And in the newer version that's we're going to cover, right now it's required you have a straight between each corner. That has actually gone away in the next version, so you don't have to do that anymore. You can have corner, and that was mostly done for the what's the word I want to use, the oval tracks. So you can have turn 1 and turn 2 actually map to turn 1 and turn 2. And so once you've got your corners where you'd like them, you can just click OK, and it will draw them out over here on the map again, and you can see pretty much where those corners are. Now this is going to be important later on, and we'll see a bunch of colors on the different maps or on the different graphs to really help locate and help you figure out where you are. And there's one particular graph on the steering page that really helps. So that's the map-related stuff. Now, in general data source stuff, we already talked about the online button. Browse is the same thing you'd expect. It's the standard Windows tool, and you can see that we have here any number of sessions that have been run, and also the IAF files are sessions, but you also have laps, which is a lap file. The IAF is the iAnalyze file, which is very similar to a iRacing file kind of thing. Anyway, so from there, we're going to go to the data source tab. And guys, how is this going for you so far? Is this useful, or am I boring you with stuff you already know?
It's useful.
That's useful.
Okay, all right. Yep, just thought I'd check. Want to make sure everybody gets something out of all of this. Okay. So we're looking at, so now we're going to go to the data source tab. And we also have two other choices here. We have driver's best and others best. I apparently haven't had I had collected a lap from where somebody else has set the best lap. But if you hit the driver's best lap, it will load the session that has the best lap. I probably shouldn't have clicked that. It looks like it's going to take a while. It will load the best lap that you personally set, that it has recorded. And so it will load that, and apparently my best was a 109.8. Who knew? And actually, it's not, because we know that this one here is a 108.7. Since I probably reset my settings, that's the last one. My development machine sometimes does, this is the one I developed the software on, so that it might not necessarily reflect of what's going on. But you can see it did pick a lap to use there. Let's go back to Brian's lap here. Or Chris's lap, I'm sorry. And the same thing will happen for another driver's best lap. You can do that on some of the sessions as well. And notice here it's not highlighted because there's no other drivers in these sessions. If you had a session loaded that had other drivers, it would show that. And so your data source and your reference source, these are the two most important concepts to get. And one of the things that's really important to do is to try to always be aware of what you're looking at within data acquisition. And one of the things that we'll do, and we'll take a look at when we jump to the driver's page here, is we'll take a look at signals and kind of how to get a system to help you figure out what you're looking at. And actually, let's go there now. Just really quickly, the data source and the reference source, basically two separate laps that you can compare against each other. And it just gives you, and you can toggle, on most graphs and things, you can toggle the reference lap on or the data lap on and off, depending upon what your preferences and what you're analyzing. So for example, here we are on the driver's page. This is the page kind of showing, comparing the two laps, and you can see that there's quite a bit of data here, and there's a lot of overlaps things, especially down here in the pedals. There's all sorts of plots going on there. So what you can do is, if that's a little too much data for you, you can just come down here and select or unselect all the reference laps, and now you know you're only looking at the data lap. So you can start looking at some very basic data analysis stuff. You can start looking at brake pressure or how your pedal pressures and what you're doing when you're driving the car. Probably the single best thing that the best way I always start looking at data is I always pick my best lap and my worst lap, and that would be I would put my best lap in one of the reference or the data source. My advice is to always pick one that you do and always use the reference lap. Say, for example, if you want that to always be your best lap. And so your reference lap here, I've got selected, well, that's my best lap that I think I know about. And then use the data source for the lap you're comparing against it. Okay, and understanding which is important for interpreting the time gained loss plot up here, because when it's red, that means the data lap is behind in time, and you can barely see it on the cars going around the little circles going around the map, but the reference car is slightly ahead. But we'll see it pick up here that the blue car, the data car, is actually ahead now, and when it's in green, the data lap is actually ahead in time. And recognizing that and understanding that is an important thing. So it's really important to know what your data lap is and what your reference lap is. Now, one thing that I do when I set up my signals, you notice here you can change your colors of any of your signals here. I like to make the particular colors, I like to make them a particular shade of color. So for example, on the throttle, I want my throttle to be green. Now, I will make my data throttle a lighter color green than I will my reference throttle. And my reference throttle here, you can see I made it a darker color. Here, why do I do that? This gives me a way of saying instantly, if I see a brighter shade of color, I know that's a data lap right away. And I know what I'm looking at. And when you have signals crossing back and forth over each other, for example, taking a look at the pedals stuff down here, boy, that's a really confusing graph. What is all that saying? Well, I can tell that this is a lighter color green and that's a darker color green at the top here, and it's really showing me that in the reference lap, man, did I ever get on the gas faster than I did in my data lap. And so that gives me a clue right there that I'm going to be I'm going to do a lot better in that corner. And wouldn't you know it, look at the time. I'm actually it's the other way around, isn't it? In the data lap, by going in a little deeper and not jumping on it so far, I was actually able to gain time through the corner and turn the car through it, and move up a little faster there. And excuse me. So that's one thing. Now, one other thing you can do on this particular graph is you have the little rotate button here, and that will move the different graphs into the different sections here. So we're able to take if you're interested in taking a little bit better look at a little closer look at the pedals graph and at the comparisons, you can make that to a larger part of the graph, so you can take a look at it, but still have the others too for reference within there. And you'll notice that I zoomed in certain spots, and I also was able to unzoom. Zooming is just click and drag. You just put the mouse and then drag where you'd like to stop it, and it will zoom in. You notice it's highlighted up over here in the corner track map. So you can kind of think, you can know where exactly you're looking at. One of the nice things is that whenever you do zoom, it also zooms in on, or it was supposed to, it should have zoomed in on the particular corner of the track, and now it's gonna be zoomed over here to this particular corner over here. And I'll look in to see why that didn't work that particular time. But that's, so you're always looking at what you're zooming between the different corners of the maps and on the track.
Question, Doug.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, a question on the bottom portion where your percent miles per hour in degrees. On mine, I only have the reference. How do I get the data to show?
On the
Down at the bottom, yeah, those bars.
oh
So, yeah, I'm not
okay.
showing data.
Yes, all right. Now okay, that's a good question, because there is a difference between the different data types that exist. The iRacing doesn't publish all of the variables that it possibly could for every driver, and for only the cars coming for the other drivers in a session, you have. And let's see if we can find a race here. This would be probably a good time to do this. We'll explain it while we're looking at it. That looks like it's a pretty big one. Let's grab that. Okay. If you have an other driver, and by another driver I mean a driver who's not you recorded in the session, they don't have all of the same data that you have recorded for you. It's limited to essentially about 5 different traces. Displacement or position on the racetrack, speed, steering wheel angle, engine RPM, and gear selection. Those are the 5 things that you have available to you for the particular car, for an other driver's car. And of course, for you have as many. For your car, you have something, depending upon the car that you're running, anywhere between 40 and 80 different signals available to you to plot and look at. And there's many more that we don't even share with you because they're kind of really arcane or just internal to iRacing as well. That's all published in the public telemetry feed. Okay. Great. I picked up the one long one that didn't have any other drivers in it. Excellent. Let's see if I can try one more, guys. I may not have a race here, but when you select a driver who's not you, that's another driver, and it will not have over here. It will not have the data traces if there's the brake or the throttle. It will have speed and steering wheel angle, but that's it. So does that answer your question?
Yes, I understand. I downloaded a race as you were going through the example, and the data I got was from a driver who doesn't have it, and I just loaded my own, and bingo, there it showed up.
Okay. Oh, good. Yeah. And one of the things I'd like to do at some point, but I haven't had the time to because it's going to take a lot of analysis and figuring out, but to try to derive an artificial brake and throttle channel. And so that we can do some comparison there with the understanding, but I don't know if that'd be helpful or not. I mean, it's a very possible thing. It's something that we can do, I think, without too much of an effort, but is it something that we want to do? Oh, sugar. Oh, it's going to reload it for us here. Okay, so getting back to to where we were here. So that's pretty much the driver's page, and of course you have your reference lap and your G gauges and such here. Can I ask you guys a question? How many of you actually use these gauges here, the steering wheels and the G gauges?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Hey, Ralph. Yeah, okay, I was just kind of curious. And oh, by the way, the one other thing that you can do that we haven't covered with these plots is, before I forget, is if you press your left mouse button or your middle mouse button, it will put a lock on the plot, and that means the cursor will no longer follow the mouse. So if it's important to you to try to keep an idea of where you're at and you want to use the keyboard to mouse over things, you can do that by locking the cursor. With all of the plots throughout the program, if you click on an individual trace, And let's see, the speed one will probably be the best one to show that on. Let's make that the top one here. Okay, so I've clicked on the reference trace. If we unlock it there, you'll notice that the crosshairs will follow that trace as you move along to give you an idea of the different speed, just to give you a way of tracking what that is actually doing. When the graph is locked, it will also do that, but you can also animate the displays by clicking on the animate button, the play button, just like you would on a VCR, and it will walk through it. It tries to do it real time. It's a little bit slower sometimes because it has a lot of updating and stuff, and it kind of shows you. It will walk through all this stuff, and you can see how things change. You can even zoom in into a particular area if it's interesting to you, and kind of watch what it does, and it'll rewrap right around, so you can keep watching it what it's doing, and when you can zoom out, and it'll continue zooming. That was another feature that we added. And I'm sorry.
Sorry.
No worries. This is why we mute, right? So anyway, so that's the basic intro to the driver page and all of that. One of the things we did add was the ability to hide this stuff to give yourself more room to see the graph, because guys had asked for that. Probably, I really like this page, the steering page. It gives you a way to really take a look at how you're driving and gives you a good idea of where and if you're seeing oversteer and understeer. You'll notice these graphs on the left. This was the graph I was talking about earlier, that the colors for the different segments really kind of help in that you can show, you can see where things are happening based on those colors. Now, the steering plots here it's essentially you're plotting lateral acceleration on the y-axis versus steering. And neutral steering would be, if you're going straight ahead, would be right here at 0. And as you make I think the left turn is positive, or no, right turn I think is positive and left turn is negative. We'll have to, oops, didn't mean to do that. Okay, yep, right turn is negative. So right turns go this way. That's interesting. That kind of plays backwards on that graph, doesn't it? But what this graph is showing is that, think about it, you're in a race car, you turn your steering wheel just a little bit, and when you turn it, the car will start to turn, and you'll induce some G-force, lateral G-force. And you turn it a little more, well, you turn it a little sharper, you make a little more G-force. But eventually, you're going to get to a point where you're going to turn the wheel, and you're going to start pushing. Okay, you're going to push right. You're just not going to have the grip, and you're just going to continue going straight, and you're not going to turn anymore. And that's when you know that you have understeer, right? Or worse is when the back end lets go, and that's when you know you have understeer, and you have to rapidly turn the steering wheel the other way. And this graph here, you'll notice it's made up of a trace, the data one here and the reference here. So this is from your reference source, and this is from your data source and your reference source. And there's two components to it. There's this straight line, which gives you the general idea of the general gradient of where it thinks you should be. And then you have the whole bunch of dots that show you at every point on the racetrack what your lateral G and what your steering input was. And the dots are color-coded, clear for straights, and solid colors for whatever particular corner you might have been in when you were getting when that data point was displayed. Now, the interesting thing is here, and we'll look at the bottom down here. You see how this thing has a slight S shape? Well, if you look at the bottom here in both the red corner and the slightly purple corner, which may not be coming through terribly well, but in here you can kind of see it skips out over here. You got a little understeer going in through that right-handed corner, because the G-force stayed the same even though I kept turning the wheel more and more, or Chris kept turning the wheel more and more here. And so you can kind of get an idea that here, okay, he was developing a little bit of push coming through here, and it's just something to be aware of, really. And then up at the top, you can also look at down in this area, in this left-hander here, well, he kind of turned in, and then kind of it flattened out, and as he kept turning in, well, it kept turning, but he wasn't generating any more G-force. And I've had folks that do a lot of oval racing say that they use this to help them figure out how to drive better lines and to reduce tire wear. And so I think it's kind of a useful tool just from that. And it's also a good diagnostic. If you have any place where you have oversteer, well, what'll happen is that you'll see this will look more like an X, because you'll start turning in, and then let's say you're in the right-hander and all of a sudden the back end came around, well, you'd counter steer, so your steering would go all the way this way. So this would look kind of like an italic X character, and so you would know, aha, that's where the understeer is. And you can kind of get an idea. It's more useful for understeer to look at this, but you can kind of get, I catch a little understeer or oversteer, I'm sorry, every now and again as well. But I think if you're like me, you know when you're understeering because you hate it and it catches you pretty quick. Then there are a whole bunch of other plots here that you can use to diagnose your steering. And it all depends on what you're looking at. Perhaps one of the nicest or one of the best graphs to learn how to use is the corner radius. You know, this corner here looks just about perfect. It comes in, it levels off, and then comes right out. And certainly Chris drove it, the darker green, which is the one right in here, drove it a lot better than what I did, because I was flopping the wheel around in here as we got to the end of it. But if you get that nice, inverted U shape, or you have that U shape like that, that way you know you're driving a really good corner. This in here is not so good. Well, you can barely see it, but Chris got a little, he had to back out of the steering here a little bit, and it's not as smooth. And what the corner radius is, it's actually the instantaneous corner radius. It uses your lateral G and your speed to figure out the size of the curve that the car is that you're turning through based on steering position. You also have lateral G, so you can look for different things in that as well. And then, of course, there's the regular steering plot, so you can compare how you're turning into the corner, whether you're turning in too late compared to the other guys. And also another quick thing is just steering speed. If you have a lot of big humps in your speed like this, you're probably turning in and then having to back out of it really quickly. and that's not necessarily a good thing, and it's a pretty good idea to use that as a gauge of how smooth you're being. So if you get a big spike somewhere, it's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. And it'll probably show up in the trace eventually that if you look at the speed trace, you'll see that you probably scrubbed some speed off when you did that, and you'll be a little slower. You also have throttle and throttle speed. Throttle speed really didn't need to be here, but again, it's one of those things. If how smooth are you on the particular throttle? You can see in here. If we go down in here a little bit, I was up and down off of that throttle pretty heavily. I just couldn't stay I couldn't keep it level throughout. And of course, you want to try to be as smooth on all of your controls as you possibly can be, no matter which ones you're actually looking at. Let's see. So that's the sum of the steering pages. Guys, do you have questions on this one? Whoops. I'm sorry, I forgot to unmute you all. Okay, questions, guys? Okay, without any questions, we'll continue on here. Oh, and that was one thing I did forget to add in here, was to show, that's the other thing turning on the corners does for you, is it gives you this segment comparison. And I think this is a pretty useful tool. You can tell pretty quickly where you're ahead and you're behind, and by how much. It does all the math to figure out, how fast you're going, what your speed into a corner or a straight was, what your speed out was, what your average was through that particular corner. And if you're, one of the big things when you're looking at data is you quickly want to find ways, or you want to find quick ways to identify where you need improvement. And for me, if I was driving the reference lab or the data lab car here, I'd say, wow, I'm doing great. I'm ahead of everybody. And maybe down here in turn 5, I'd say, or start down entering onto handling how I had got onto turn 5, and so how I handled turn 4, I'd want to take a look at, because man, that guy got through there a little quicker than I did, and how did that happen? but it does give you an idea of where you're faster and slower. I think this is really effective on ovals. It's effective on road courses, but I think on road courses, the corners that matter the most are the ones before the longest straights. And in fact, here at the Glen, I actually think this corner and this corner here are the two most important. Everything else just kind of follows from those two. But that's just my opinion. I don't know. You guys may have different opinions from that. Any questions on the segment comparison report?
Yes, I have. Calling from Germany. Hello, guys.
Oh, Sasha.
Hello. Yes, as the webinar says, I think time is being made in the corners on road courses. I'm not sure about the ovals. I raced ovals many years on iRacing and a couple of other sims before, but yeah, what I'm looking at is it is quite interesting to have the data lap of your round lap time and comparing it to a reference lap from another guy who is faster, where you can exactly see what the breaking points are, where he gets the most time from it. But I think it's also what comes into question is also a time of what kind of equipment the driver uses. I mean, some people uses just a Logitech G27 or T500 Thrustmaster, I'm not sure, or a Botnar. Yeah, the breaking points will always be different on a racing sim. So my question is, what can be done to improve the lap time just by comparing the data source and the reference lap?
Okay. Well, for example, let's take a look at, let's kind of go back to the driver page for that one. And actually, you know something, Sasha, if you don't mind, we're going to jump to the track page because I think this is probably a good use to try to show how I use the track map. Oddly enough, this is not just
Sure.
one great big particular it's not just one big map, but you can do all sorts of fun things with it. And of course, you also have the report over here on the side if you want it. It's also on the driver, available on the driver's page. But the track map, I think, is unique, has some unique functionality in that you can actually plot signals on the track map. So we're going to actually plot the brake signal, and we're going to plot the throttle signal on the track map at the same time. And I have to add typing in there so we can get things quickly. And now one thing we're actually going to do is we're going to plot the data source data on the, actually we'll just do the brake for starters, on the left-hand side, and we'll put the reference source on the right-hand side. And one of the nice things that this does right up front is that it shows you where the different braking points are. Exactly where you're braking and exactly where the other driver is braking. You can compare them. You can come into the corner here, for example. We can zoom in and you can see the reference lap, which was my lap. I broke much earlier, much harder, and then I kind of let it slide off the lap here. Chris Halliday, on the other hand, he broke a bunch later. You know, it looks like it's about 50 to 175 feet later than I did. He broke much less viciously than I did, with a little bit less aggression, and he kind of held it on, waited for it, and was much easier getting off of it, and came off through here. And you can see that if we look at, let's zoom out just a little and let's get the whole corner in here. And you can see actually that by comparing the two, that the data lap was actually the faster way to was the fast way to do it, because it's gaining a whole bunch of time as we're going through here. You can kind of see it start to pick up, and it really translates to the mid corner here. Okay. And so I really think that this is a good way when you're looking for braking points and looking for ways to see where are you faster, where are you slower. You can get the time, and you can kind of compare to look at these two and see, hey, where am I gaining and losing time? And again, here, the data lap, he's picking up just that little bit of time because he's much smoother on the brakes and much gentler and less harsh than I am. I'm on and off them, and that makes a difference as you go through here. Same thing through here. He's a little, have to be aggressive in this corner a little bit, but he stays on them and carries them through. Does a little trail braking as he turns in and comes through here, whereas I stomp on him, get off him, and turn through. So I think this is one of the most useful things you can do when you're trying to learn a road course, when you're trying to learn where you're faster or slower, is that this graph, and the nice thing about it is you can relate to this graph. You can see the track in your head when you're doing it. You can see the levels of the brake signals right there. And you get an idea of very visually without having to worry about numbers, which is, or big squiggly lines on a regular plot as to where things are faster and slower. And so I really think that that's one of the biggest uses here of do that. Now, you can do the same thing on the drivers tab. You can zoom in here. Oops, that's not where I wanted to go. You can zoom in here and you can see the same information with the red trail. Let's shut off the throttle here. You can see the same information, but I don't think it necessarily conveys instantly to you right away. That the picture carries more instantaneous results in there for you than does the plot. Although you can see that right here. But you can actually, and this has the advantage of, okay, well, here's the differences on the speed or on the braking traces, and then you can see the results of that, and you can kind of see that the data lap that I was driving, okay, or I'm sorry, Chris was driving, he carried more speed into the corner, but I actually came out with as we went through here. Do I have the names right? Yeah, he's on the data lap. Okay. He's on the data lap. And so you can see that I actually ended up carrying more speed through here. And if we zoom out again, but you can also see that while I carried more speed through there, he was able to carry more speed through the whole corner and probably got back on the throttle faster than I did, I'd expect. So you can see that in the two different places, but when you look at the track plot, it's actually much more obvious when you combine it with the time game loss plot up here. Now, there's also other things you can do. Is you can also throw up the throttle trace, and this will also help you figure out when you're looking at the throttle application as you go through here. And you can kind of see that we're all pretty well on the throttle, but here, the reference lap, this is the one I was driving, I'm carrying a little bit more throttle in through here as we go through. Matter of fact, I bet you if we zoom in there, we will see that, geez, I'm still on the throttle as I'm braking. That's probably not a very good technique. Whereas Chris does a much better job on the data lap here if he's out of the throttle onto the brakes, much better transition in here, whereas I had zero transition. On the reference side, you can see I got on the brakes here, but I'm still buried the throttle, got the throttle buried. How could that possibly be any good? You're just going to confuse the car. Now, I'm sure there's maybe a use for that technique somewhere, but not when I'm driving. And so anyway, and so you can kind of look at both of these or both of these traces at the same time, and gives you even more information about where you're doing things right. I like to look at the braking trace stuff by itself because that's where I tend to be awful. I'm a dive bomber guy. I go way too deep in the corner and try to brake too much too fast, and so this helps remind me not to do that when I see the data. In terms of using this particular page, one of the things you can do is you can say, hey, I want to save these presets. You can once you've built a graph that you like, you can save that as a preset, and you can just say save preset, and we'll just call this pedals, okay? And you click save, and that'll save that preset for you. So when you clear the graph, you can come back and you can come to pedals, and it'll pop them right back up again so that you can see it. Now, there's also presets that you can share. You can share it up to the web, and you can also look for them on the web. And I think a number of guys have loaded a few things. And you can say, for example, I want to take a look at gearing. And this is actually one of the next ones I was going to show you that I find useful, is taking a look at the gearing. And you can just select keyword filters. There aren't too many here, so it doesn't do too much, but we'll just select this gearing channel here, or this preset here. We'll say OK, and we'll let it replace the current one, and it'll download it, and poof, and it's probably missing 6th gear, I would bet. So we can add sixth gear here, and again you can change the colors, and I'll make that a lighter color of the purple, and we'll change this one to, I probably should have changed the other, we'll change this one to red. Nope, we've got a red one already. Green will do. And so now we can see who's shifting into what gears when, and you get an idea of what gears you're actually running and where they're running. And it always amazes me. I will find places where I am going down 2 gears and guys are carrying 4th gear through that corner, and it's faster. And I'm just always amazed by that. I think it's fairly interesting that that's the case. That you can see that kind of stuff. You can see the shift points here, that they make a difference as well. And you can see what's faster or slower in the lap times, of course. But you can also see, comparing, well, where a guy's shifting and how much speed. It'll help you figure out how much speed you should be carrying out of the corner. And for example, are you in the wrong gear? For example, the reference, I was driving the reference car and I was down. I got my gears completely wrong in through here. I carried 4th, then I downshifted, then I got out, and it just hurt me all the way down this straightaway. So that's the good thing. Sasha, does that answer your question? Okay.
Yes, it is. Yes. Sorry, a bit delay. Yeah, but it asked my question. Yes, it answered my question. Sorry.
Okay, and you can do that for more than just the channels that I showed you, and that's kind of this. That's how you start looking at data, is when you start looking at things for what's faster. And taking a look at the brakes is the best part to start. Looking at throttle is the next one, and then you can start getting really into the, take for example, into the steering side of things, and you can take a look at, if we're going to look in through here. Okay, well, how's he turning in through here? Oh, you can see the lighter color reference or data lap here. He actually had better form coming out of there than I did, and he quickly got slid over. Looks like he probably got straightened out and got in here, and then started getting the corner and started turning in for the other corner really quickly, whereas I kind of barely got out of the corner, turned in, and then started turning in for the next S before we came through. So you can do it with other signals as well. I mean, there's a lot of data here. I mean, but I honestly think that most drivers, and this is something from back in my karting days, is that I remember I used to spend an inordinate amount of time spending it on setup. And when I look back at that, if I had spent more time working on the driver and not on the car, I would have been a better driver. That's just one of the things I've learned over the years. And when you're there at the track, you got the thing in front of you, you got all these tools, you got to do something. I want to be faster. Let's change the setup. Well, very few people drive the car at that 95% where that's true, at least out of the box. It takes us all a little bit to get faster. And hey, when we all started iRacing, I remember our first race in the Mazda. I bet you were a lot slower than you are now because you've learned an awful lot in what you're doing there. Now the gearing tab here is the this gearing tab. It shows you. Gives you a way to compare the gears on the different cars. It's not quite a shift chart, but it tries to be one. We try to look at the data and try to pick it out so we can get an idea of what the shift chart actually should look like if we were able to generate one like they typically do for different cars. This is meant to help give you an idea on gearing, whether you're close or far off from an individual's car. And it looks to me here, there was a little bit of a gearing change between my car. It looks like I had, what is this, a 5th gear here. I had it a little bit further back than say Chris did, but it didn't seem to make that much of a difference, did it? But it was it gives you an idea, because I've been at different racetracks and been walked by after I've taken all the downforce out of the car by a guy, and it just turned out to be a gearing change on the top gear. If I had gone a little bit either more or less on that gear, I would have probably been doing as well as he did towards the end of the straightaway, or at least made it harder for him to get the graft and pull me the way he did. So that's always kind of interesting to me, and just gives you just a quick way to kind of look at if you're at the right gear or not. And I don't have any ride heights. Well, that's not good. Let's see if we can go find some data with ride heights. I'm thinking we ought to switch over to an oval track. What's your guys' favorite oval?
I normally run, like this week I'm running Charlotte in the Gen 6 quite a bit. And I've noticed too, seeing the guys that runs the oval side are trying to get, mostly what we look at on the oval side is the ride heights and mostly the bump and rebounds, because it compares to what, how high the car is, because you got to find that comfort zone, especially at Charlotte, because it's not really, you can find the consistent line, but it's different.
Right.
Because I'm good friends with Nick Hollinger, and me and Nick, we pretty much work together and stuff, and some of the WC drivers, and we talk about quite a bit of different things about front end, how to make a turn, what percentage of how much spring, because I've noticed the bigger, the softer the spring you make, the looser the rear end gets, but you got to watch how much spring you put into the oval cars.
Sure. Oh, without question. And it's the setup on oval is almost more important than just about everywhere else.
Yeah.
Because there's the different, I've always, for the last 15 years, I've been working building shock absorber dynos that are used in NASCAR, Formula One, just about every race series you can think of. And the interesting thing about that is that I honestly think that the hardest working race engineers in racing are the guys in NASCAR, just because of the way the rules are, and the fact of the matter is, the cars are so strictly governed, and they're using such older technology. It's not like Formula One. Hey, you're a half a second off, go build a new wing, toss it on. Geez, you're faster. You can't do that in NASCAR. You've really got to work hard to find the setup that's going to work best for you. And even with the latest, the Gen 6 cars and stuff, they've taken more of the ability of the teams to really play with the aerodynamics and the body shapes and such away from them. And so it's actually, I think it's the hardest job in the world for those guys to find the right setup. And because, what, a thousandth of a percent could be the difference between 15th and 3rd on the grid. And so it's one of the reasons why the setup matters more there. Let's hope we got some ride height data here, and we do. And actually, they're running darn close to the same setup here, aren't they? And so yeah, so now we come to the ride heights tab to try to give an idea of what you'd be looking for here, and really what you're trying to prevent. And for guys that have that do a lot of oval stuff, they probably understand this better than I do, because I haven't done a lot of oval racing. But keeping the center front splitter, the CFS, from bottoming out is one of the big things that you're after. You want to, in general, I think you want to keep that just about as low as you can go and keep it from bottoming out and hitting zero and rubbing on the racetrack. And if you do that, then you're in pretty good shape. And the center front splitter is an imaginary signal. It's made up just off of at the center of the front splitter. And this isn't something that most race teams, they calculate it, but it's not something they normally have. They usually have to do it off of shock positions and that kind of thing. So unless they have a little radar sensor type thing. Anyway, and so that's what you're kind of looking here. And has anybody here done a lot of oval stuff with the ride heights and can explain a little better what we're looking at for here?
Oh, well, yeah, I did a lot of laps on iRacing oval. Well, I started ovals back in 2003 with NASCAR Racing 2003. That was my online racing when it took place. In iRacing, I raced really from 2008, well, nearly 2013 or so, just left-handers, as we all know. Very interesting in the corners. I think that when you go into the corners, it counts to seal off the entire splitter in front to get the most downforce possible and get the car turned, but that is a very difficult story. I was not so, not so, what is it called? I was not I'm not sure about the word right now. But important is you have to seal off the splitter to get the most downforce, and and just make sure that you don't get any over or understeer. But mostly the A cup, so the cup cars in iRacing are very snappy. The B cars are very easy to drive. That is my perspective, but the A car is a difficult beast to tame. So yeah, that's what I experienced.
Which is why looking at the center front splitter is so important, because you're trying to get that as close to
Yes.
the ground as you possibly can. And you can use the ride heights here to kind of help figure out how much closer you can go. So you can kind of change your ride heights to keep dropping it and reference that against the center front splitter to see what effect you're having when you make those setup changes. So I guess the next thing we'll do is we'll go over to the damper tab and we'll take a quick look at this. And we don't have shock velocities. Awesome. Oh, that's because I have the wrong version. Tell you what, we'll look at the damper tab when we look at new stuff. We have the lap report, which is a pretty straightforward thing. I don't have the data up for, should have looked at that earlier. And we also have the fuel report. Do you guys need explanations on what these reports are, or are they self-explanatory for you?
I got a
For
question.
me, it's self-explanatory.
On the
Go ahead.
on the fuel report.
Okay.
How does it actually tell you what you're going to burn within, say that period between lap, from the start of the race till pit stop, what would be the average?
And well, what it will do. Here, let's get some data up here. I'm hoping that this will have a few more things here. And yeah, that ought to do it, I hope. Let's go take a look at the. Shoot, I don't have enough laps, darn it. Well, what this will do is it will actually show you. Let's see if we can bring up that other session that I found earlier that had a whole ton of laps. Let's open that guy up. What the fuel report does is, and actually if you have an extra screen lying around, hook it up, because this is actually a fun thing to have on the side, because it'll actually show you the number of laps remaining based on this whatever strategies you choose, whether it's the aggressive, the standard, or the conservative. And for each of those, you can choose the different ways to look at the actual data that you're using. For each of them, you have a number of different statistical ways to look at them, whether you're looking at the mean, which is just the general average of all the laps, the median, which is the value that's 50% above, and half the laps are above and half the laps are below that value, or you can say the fastest mean or the slowest mean, and choose those from there. So for example, if we selected the fastest mean there, and then you could actually, so it will take those, and then based on the method, whether you're looking at lap time or fuel consumption, because they're not necessarily the same thing, to pick what the fastest mean should be and what the fastest or what the fastest mean should be interpreted as. So do you pick the laps based on fuel consumption, or do you pick them based on lap time? and then it will use that. It will average all the laps that it shows here out, and it will show you the median and this and that, and it will tell you how many laps you have left if you run exactly at the average fuel percentage from that. The standard is the standard stuff. You can do the same thing, same message, but you get but typically I tell folks to use the all laps, the mean or whatever for this one, because it includes every single lap that you've done, fast and slow, and figures that your regular lap time is going to be right in the middle there. And your conservative, I tell it to take the slowest laps that you've run and by lap time, and then average those 7 based on that. So let's see, did we get more data? Yes, we did. Let's see if that'll help. And so you can see, yeah, this is much better. You can kind of see it took the different laps, shows you their lap time and how much fuel you're using for each particular one, and then shows you what your average range, how many laps you could be expected to do that, and what the median range is as well. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, I answered my question on that.
Okay, and there's all sorts of stuff you can do to play with. I think it's more useful if you can actually put this up on a monitor to see it, because it will show you in big colors. You know, I think it's red, green, and blue, I think, are the colors that it'll show you the laps left. So if you're running a pit stop race and you're looking at checking your fuel, it gives you a number of different ways to spec things out and kind of see how it's going. One thing I'd like to do that I haven't yet is integrate that into the voice command stuff, so you can ask it how fast and how quick is it going on the particular things.
If I may interrupt, the fuel report is a good tool. I mainly race in the Blancpain Sprint Series right now, so it's a 40 minutes GT race. Where right now we are at Road Atlanta racing there, and it's a great tool in iAnalyze racing to see what kind of fuel you burn, and it picks you, or it helps you to pick a strategy when you can undercut a pit stop or just do a normal pit stop in a race, and it helped me to improve or to gain a few to gain a few positions during the race, you know, just for the pit strategy. It's a great tool.
So cool, good to hear. Glad to hear, Sasha.
Yes.
So okay, so those are the fuel report. The lap report, I know we didn't cover it much, but you can kind of see it picks it just shows you your laps in some summary format and shows you where you were fastest in the individual sectors, and the sectors as drawn out by iRacing. And the last thing is the sandbox, and the sandbox is a kind of an interesting tool here, in that we can drag controls over from here and over into this area here. For example, we're going to draw. You always have to start with a distance plot. I'm eventually going to add track plot and other things here, but you also can drag other types of displays and drag them over to this side. Now, you look at this, and this really isn't very an attractive way to look at things, but if you can drag things by their title bar, and you can drop them in different places on the plots on top of other things. So now we plot those two, they get plotted together. You can also move things around, so you can slide things around and give yourself different things to look at here. Now, one of the things you can, in order to make the plot useful, you have to be able to drag signals here. And so you switch over to the signals tab here, and you can see a number of the different signals that you can take a look at. And so if you're interested in, say, for example, shock deflection, okay, you can drag the left front shock there. And if you wanted to see, for example, a couple of corners of the shock deflection stuff, you could lay out the plot like this, and then come back and we can grab the the left rear if you just want to look at the left side, so you can compare those two and notice everything zooms together, and you can zoom in and take a look at all the different bits and pieces of the track. And these, just like the track map, they have presets and you can save them out, load them in. And take a look at different different ways of looking at things. So do you guys have any questions on the stuff we've talked about so far? Because I'm going to close this down and start the development version and show you some new features and the tire page as well, which is in version 59.
I have just one quick question.
Okay. Oops,
At the beginning,
sorry.
No, it's fine. At the beginning of the presentation, you were saying that we were only going to keep the top 10% of the laps.
Yes.
Are they season bound, or is it like top 10 of all time?
All time. That's actually a good question. I should change it to the season, shouldn't I? That would be worthwhile. Good idea. I'm going to actually write that idea down. That's brilliant. I love talking to you guys.
Thanks.
Yeah, no, I mean, and by the way, if you have questions or ideas like that, or you say, gee, Doug, if you just add this one little thing, send it to me. It may take me a while to get it done, but if we add it in, and if it's useful for you, it's going to be useful for somebody else too. And I really want this to be the best tool for you guys. Oh wait, oh my gosh, you're seeing the back door now. Oh, you're seeing some of the code. Oh, look out.
Uh-oh.
All the secrets are gone. Oh no. We should be compiling here and running here in just a second. It takes a little bit. Version 59, you guys it fixed the damper page and problem since the name changes in the signals, and also it had the tire page, which has any of you looked at the tire page yet?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Yes, I did.
Do you guys like it or hate it? I think it's one of the ugliest things I've ever done in my life.
I enjoy it.
Like it.
Oh, God bless you guys. I love it. I think it's useful, mind you, but I just think it's ugly. But yeah, it was a tough thing for me to get my head around to figure out how to do it. I wasn't quite sure what the right way to look at those things were. Let's get the Charlotte stuff up. Let's hope they had. Oops. Oh, that'll work. That'll work. And so if we go to tire temps, you've got the tire temp page, and basically all this shows is the temperature of the tires as you go through as you go around the racetrack, and it shows the left front reference, the right front reference. You can kind of see why I think this is a little much, but I think probably most guys probably just look at the particular corner that they're interested, or the particular car that they're interested in, but you can kind of see where the tire is getting hot or hotter in the corner. You have control over what these colors represent, and you can see here that the minimum is 75 degrees Fahrenheit and the maximum is 200. You can control those, so we can make this 195 if we wanted, and it makes a slight change, and we can bump this up to say 100, and it should make a little bit bigger change as to what the graph looks like. We'll knock that back down to 75. And you also have the ability to use these sliders over here to kind of change how much should be green and how much should be blue. It starts off evenly distributed, and you can see what the individual temperatures it sets it to. So when it's full red, it's 189 degrees where that red slider is. Anything above that, it's hotter. When it's in the middle here at orange, it's 165 degrees, just to give you numbers to compare it to. This is another one of those pages that I think the numbers are great, but actually being able to see it as a spectrum type thing, it gives you more information than you'd possibly want. It gives you that information quickly than trying to decipher it from a particular graph. At least that's what I think. You're free to disagree with me. So that's kind of the tire page. Let's go take a look at the damper page. Yeah, I fixed it. The damper page, we were going to talk about this one, that one, but it was this 57, which had a little bit of an issue with it. This page shows you the relative number of bins that your shock speeds fall into. Now, this is kind of an important thing to do. chassis roll, any kind of chassis movement happens at, essentially under 1 inch per second, 25 millimeters per second. That's where most of the body roll, chassis roll, whatever you want to call it, and comes from. So when you're talking about handling for a race car, that's typically what you're talking about. That's the area that you're looking for. Everything else, curb strikes, whatever, is all outside of that bounds. And some folks will tell you 1.5 inches per second. Some will say 2. Doesn't really matter what number you really pick, but it's a small number, and if you're in there, that's where the low speed behavior of the damper is really in effect. And when you're on this page, what you're really looking to see, in theory, is you want to see balance in an individual shock absorber between the low speed rebound and the bump rebound. You want those percentages to be about the same, or I'm sorry, yes, you want those percentages to be about the same, and same thing with the high speeds, okay? You also want to try to get the same amount of the speed distribution between the rebound side and the bump side, because what goes up must come down. It's not always possible for a number of different reasons, because you might not stay in there that long if you're on a fairly rough track, what have you. But what you're looking for is balance in that. You want to get the numbers about the same. Now, does that necessarily work all the time? Well, the answer is no. There's a number of different things that will affect that, which is the track, the driver, conditions, tire wear, all the stuff that affect it can affect things. And you have to find, and I think I was talking with, I can't remember who it was, but was talking with one gentleman about this graph, and he said, well, I find if I'd go for balance, I can get it, but my car's slower. And I said, okay. Well, then don't go for balance, go for what's faster. Make a note of that in that car so that every time you go set it up, you remember to try to get the dampers the same way, because that's a great place to start for getting faster. And dampers are, is the second to last black box on a race car. The tires are the biggest black box on a race car. It's the thing that we understand the least in all of racing, despite all the tire modeling and what we do know an awful lot about them, but they are the ones that offer the most variability and the most change in any given lap. So you kind of have to take that into account, that if this is faster for you, and this is the kind of, it may be because of the type of driver you are, how you drive, it may be the rest of the setup, it may affect that, and it may only be for this car at this track that's the fast way. But you'll pretty quickly learn, you'll see a distribution over the course of the shock, over a number of times of using it, that you'll start to recognize is, hey, that's my fingerprint, that's my damper fingerprint, that's what I want to go for, and you'll be able to adjust your car for that. Now, of course, it's going to change based on the type of racing you're doing, but in general, it's kind of a good guideline. And always when you're using this page, you're always looking for balance between bump and rebound, and then you start on balance between the axle on the same axle, and then balance front to back on the same side. And if you could have the numbers about the same, then you're damping the front and the rear of the car at the same frequency, and you're not going to be inducing some weird handling problems because your right rear tire is bouncing up and down a whole bunch while you're entering a corner. If its front goes in easy, it goes in at the same frequency. The right ought to as well. So anyway, that's kind of the damper page. Questions on that?
No. I just can try to explain what I learned from the damper setting. As you say, Doug, balancing them out depends on the track, and I think on the corners. The dampers are a part of the suspension system, which is the last part of a setup, which I would call, because when I'm just talking about road racing, when I go out with the car, I just try the spring setup I have and leave everything unchanged and see how it goes, and then see how many corners does the track have, does it clockwise, counterclockwise, and then I just try to find a bit about more oversteer, understeer,
right,
about some special corners, and then the last part I'm going for the dampers and rebound to balance them out.
Sure, and that's actually not a bad approach. You know, learn the track, learn the car, and then start messing with this final stuff. So that's actually some good advice there. So we're taking a look, moving on to a couple of new features that are coming, that are going to be coming here pretty soon. One thing I wanted to talk about was one thing we added to the options page was the ability to turn on and off setup sharing. I don't like it when you turn off setup sharing, by the way. That's, you know, it gives a lot of guys some help. And as we've discussed a little bit, you know, the hardware that you have and the way that you drive is going to be the different from the guy that downloaded your setup. And chances are he's not going to be as fast as you anyway in that particular setup. So I mean, it's healthy to share them. I don't think you're giving away the kitchen sink to do that, but a number of folks have asked for this ability to turn it off. So that is there. One of the things that's going to be coming in a newer in an updated version is that every time you try to upload a lap with the setup, you're going to get a half a day free and add it to your subscription. So I'm hoping that that's going to be enough incentive to keep guys trying to share their setups. So so that's going to be something we're going to be doing there. So that's one change here that you're going to see. There's a couple of new changes. One of them is going to be the multi-lap, and we don't have anything with multi-laps. Let's see if we can. Let's see. Can I browse? Do I have anything at Charlotte that's not so big? No, I don't. All I've got is laps. Darn it. Sugar. Let's see here. I guess what we'll do is let's go back to Watkins Glen. That's always seems to be one of my favorites. And we'll load one of the sessions up here. I don't know if you guys noticed, but you can do more than one thing at a time here. You don't have to wait for it. You can bring up the browser to bring up another session if you want. You can do all sorts of fun stuff like that.
And thanks to many CPU cores.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Oops, I picked the wrong thing again. Okay, so we're going to have a couple of laps here. And so this is going to be the multi-lap thing. You can see it has all these plots over here. Well, one of the things you get to do is now you can pick a signal and you can compare on all your laps. How consistent are you? And you can see I'm not, but this is a tool that folks have been asking for. So we've added this in, and this will be coming out soon. So you'll have the ability to compare different laps to different things there. The next big feature that I think is probably going to be one of the big ones here is that we've improved the track editor here significantly, so you can tell what type of thing you want to add in, and it'll just do it. But otherwise, it works generally the same as every other as it had in the past. And we've also added in a new feature, which is the marker feature. We've also added the ability to make this screen go full screen, so you can actually look at things. If you want to add a marker, you can pick the type of marker, what kind of function you want it to look for, what data are you looking for? Are you looking for minimum, maximum, corner, an entry or exit? And then what you're looking for, what signal. So we're going to look for speed. So I want to find the lap maximum speed, and we'll add that in, and we'll add that one, and we'll have it display right there. And then we will also add in one for the lap minimum speed, just because it's easy, it's right there. And it says it's pointed to there because it doesn't have any data to compare it to. And we'll put this one up here, and we'll say OK. And when we come to the track map, now you can see where it sees the fastest and the slowest speeds, and it will actually point those out for you. And you can actually, if you turn on the reference lap as well, you can, oops, I turned on the wrong one. That's what I wanted. You can also see where the fastest and slowest reference lap as well, so for all the markers. Now the markers themselves have a number of different functionality you can do with them. You could, let's get rid of these guys. Let's get rid of this guy and that guy. Let's say we want to find let's say we want to put a segment marker in, and I want to find that segment. You can just go down the list and it'll highlight them for you, so you can kind of say down the front straight, what's my top speed, and you can add that and put that right there, and you get the corner marker. And when you go back to the track page, lo and behold, there it is. It tells you what the top speeds are. Not a lot of fun stuff in that. Just some better ways to get information out. I'm thinking eventually we're going to add things like marker groups, so you can have more than one for a particular graph saved, and you'll be able to take a look at things there. And that is pretty much all I have. I hope it was a good intro for guys. Do you have any other questions? Is there anything I didn't cover that you wanted to see that you'd like to hear about? Oops, I got to unmute you all. I'm sorry, guys. Is there any other questions or
That's a good job.
Okay. There's some other neat things. You kind of see we've got these kind of overlay track maps now, so you can show and hide these guys, so you can get more space to look at stuff. We've kind of adding those, improving the formatting in different spots. One thing I didn't cover that I probably should have, but you've been seeing me use, is that as you mouse over the blue things, the blue areas are where the fun stuff is. If you mouse over that, you'll find there are things to do. And actually, I forgot to show this one. If you change this to rate of time gained and lost, and for this one, it's not very good. It's very good for ovals, but you can see the spikes at where you're gaining and losing time quickly. It's just another way of looking at data that I think it has some value for folks. And well, if that's it, guys, typically we'd have a race after, but I have to go. I've got things I need doing. But I really wanted to thank you for coming by and stopping by and being customers. And I'm always available. Please drop me an email, whatever. It may take me a little bit to get back to you, but I will get back to you. And if it's a problem that you're having that's preventing you from using the software and stuff, we can always do a remote control session. And those end up taking time anyway, because I end up talking to you about all sorts of stuff, and basically giving the lecture or the demonstration that we just gave here, on a one-on-one basis as well. So, and we can actually talk about other things that are of more interest to you in the things that you're finding there and doing. So with that, thanks a lot, guys. Really appreciate it, and we'll have a race coming up here sometime soon, because I always think those are fun. We get a bunch of us in there doing stuff. So with that,
thank you very much, Douglas.
Hey, you're welcome, Sasha. Appreciate it.
Hey, Doug, I have a quick question about audio.
Yep, Kenneth, what's up?
Hey, is there any known issues with Windows 10 and the speech recognition? Because I can't for the life of me get iAnalyze to recognize my devices.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I had no problem with it on Windows 7. I just upgraded to 10 and it will not. I'm speaking on the mic right now, so obviously Windows recognizes it, but iAnalyze won't recognize it at all.
Won't recognize the mic I tell you,
it says problem initializing speech recognition, no speaker, headset detected.
Really? Huh.
I've tried everything, and I've configured speech recognition on Windows.
Yeah, and I haven't run into it. I know we run on Windows 10. I've tested it. I've been on it a number of different things. Off the top of my head, no. I don't know anything. Do you have time tomorrow afternoon?
Yeah, probably. Most
okay.
likely.
I'll give you a call tomorrow afternoon, say 4-ish or so. If you're not going to be I'm not going to interrupt your football, am I?
Yeah, 4:25. Yeah.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay, well, let's do 3 o'clock. Is 3 o'clock better? Or?
Yeah, that's fine. That'll work.
Okay, let's do 3 o'clock, Kenneth. I'll give you a call.
May I ask one more question, Doug?
Sure.
Okay, just about the dampers tab. I know it's a very deep story, but just keep it simple. When I do 5 laps and I go into the pits and just go out again, the telemetry always records, Does iAnalyze Racing collects all lap data and put it cumulative together just to get all laps within the dampers tab, or just one lap?
It's only one lap.
It's only one lap. Okay.
It's the data source lap. It's all the data source lap. It's the data source lap and the
Right.
reference lap, and that's really all you need. You should only really be looking at one lapse of data because there's all sorts of stuff that can get in there. And that actually brings up a really good point that I should point out is that there's a number of things in telemetry management that are interesting. This switch here, enable dual mode auto merge. If you are in a practice, I recommend turning this on for a practice session. Turn it off for a race session. Reason why
Right.
is because every time you go back to the pits, it tries to merge in the iRacing telemetry that's not part of the public data feed. And so it tries to merge it in so you have it available. If you're going into the pits, if you're in the pits during a race, I'm not so sure I definitely want something eating up all my computing cycles or eating up extra computing cycles when it might, when things are going on the car, etc. So I usually, if you're going into a race, I turn that off. But if you do that, it'll pop up a little screen. It doesn't do it. You can't see it from within the game. But if you get back out to the garage, to the what is it, the garage screen, I guess, or the scenic screen that you go to when you escape out of the car, and you have that on, it will merge the laps that you just did so that you can actually go back to iAnalyze and go to the ride heights and say, hey, I made a ride height change. Did it make a difference? And so you can take a look at that data, but you have to wait for it. And it takes a little bit. I mean, it does take about, I'd say about 5 to 8 seconds a lap. It can be a bit cumbersome, but but it is only for one lap.
Okay, thank you, Doug.
Okay, all right. Anybody else got questions?
I think I have one simple one.
Okay.
On the data sources for the track lap,
Yep.
what would be the advantage or disadvantage of using like a different one or somebody else's?
There isn't any. Just the one that looks best to you. If it was doing it the data acquisition way and it was real dead reckoning, and it is dead reckoning, but the speeds that we get from iRacing are actually computed or the position that we get from iRacing is that actually computed by a percentage of track travel. So we pretty much, there's really not going to be that much of a difference other than the lateral G input for someone's. And if we go to, let's go here, and you can actually see if we turn these on, and we'll turn off, oh, I can't turn off the track path here. Oh, that's stupid. I should have been able to do that. But you can see if we zoom in, hello, what did I do? Oh, did I break? I think I broke zooming on this. Uh-oh. This is the joy of working on the development system. But you can see the red lap and the blue lap here,
Right.
the traces. Those are the differences. You can see the track maps running here. The blue lap is the data lap, and it kind of comes in a little sooner. It hugs a little closer to the left-hand side here than the red lap does. So there's not necessarily that much difference. You can see there's very little difference in all of this. Although, and if you go here, you can see that there's a bunch more, and you can actually this is a very good representation of what the driver line looked like from driver to driver. Is it exactly picture perfect? You can pinpoint it on a map with that? No, but it does give you a good idea of who was where and when, and it does join back up pretty well. So does that kind of answer your question, or because there really is no particular advantage. There's some advantage here because you can compare them, but there's no advantage in the I think in the particular track map itself.
No, that was good.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, guys, hey, thanks again, guys. I really appreciate you guys showing up for the session. I hope I was able to help some guys get started. If you have questions, give me a call. Send me an email. I'm always happy to answer them. And thanks for being customers. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for making the software.
No worries. Take it easy, guys. Night.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.